All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my good friend Lee Fang. Lee is the author of the book The Machine, A Field Guide to the Resurgent Right. He is a reporter for The Nation magazine and The Republic Report, which you can find at republicreport.org and thenation.com. You can also find him on Twitter at LHFang. Lee, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Matt, thank you so much for having me.
All right, so Lee, you recently wrote a really interesting piece at The Nation entitled "The Real Reason Pot is Still Illegal." I'm fairly certain some of my listeners are very interested in this story. Tell them why exactly marijuana is still illegal.
Well, Matt, this story is a political one. It takes a look at the most powerful political opponents of marijuana reform. And, these opponents will say in public that marijuana legalization is very dangerous. But if you take a look at their bottom line, marijuana legalization poses a great danger to their fundraising, how they raise money, and marijuana in many ways has become a cash cow for some of these opponents. So in the piece, we look at the role of law enforcement and how police departments around the country have used marijuana to make lots of money. And we also look at some of the largest drug prevention nonprofits and how they have been raising substantial amounts of money from the pharmaceutical industry, specifically from the prescription painkiller lobby, and how that relates to marijuana.
Let's start, because in the article, you actually start with the story of Patrick Kennedy and his connection to a coalition here. So tell us about Patrick Kennedy's connection here.
Well, Patrick Kennedy represents kind of a supreme irony or hypocrisy, if you will. Former congressman, it was a scandal in that he was caught abusing different drugs. He was abusing Oxycontin, alcohol, cocaine, some other prescription drugs. And he crashed his car on Capitol Hill. It came out that he was addicted to these drugs, and he resigned his seat in Congress. Well, he has kind of rebirthed his public career. Now he is one of the leading spokesmen against marijuana. It's kind of been puzzling for marijuana reform advocates because, he doesn't talk about any of the drugs he actually abused. He obsesses over marijuana. And what was interesting, at least for me, and I opened my piece with this, Patrick Kennedy was speaking at an event earlier this year at a drug prevention nonprofit called the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, CADCA, one of the largest drug prevention groups in the country. And he was speaking at one of their rallies with over 2,000 people, and he was giving a rah-rah speech against marijuana. And again, in a very puzzling part of this picture, this event was sponsored by Purdue Pharma, the manufacturers of Oxycontin, the drug that actually kills many people. Marijuana does not kill any people, at least not from overdoses. And this is the drug that ruined Kennedy's congressional career. Yet here it was saying that the drug that we need to fight, that is the most dangerous threat to society, is marijuana.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And again, that is what one of the things that Patrick Kennedy was on when he had his infamous incident with his car. You actually write that people in the U.S. Are actually consume more than 84% of the entire worldwide supply of oxycodone, and almost 100% of hydrocodone opiates, which is, again, it's wild that you have this oxy industry, which so many Americans are addicted to, and they're the ones who are saying, no, wait, definitely we do not want to legalize marijuana, but still, Oxycontin is totally fine.
Right, and this is a supreme epidemic. It's the CDC says it's one of the biggest drug abuse epidemics our country has ever seen, and that's on prescription painkillers. They kill over 16,000 Americans a year. they actually are a gateway drug to heroin, because they both come from the opium poppy. It's a very similar high, and folks who have struggled with heroin addiction, they hurt themselves or have some kind of medical incident, and they're prescribed a painkiller, and almost overnight they feel their heroin addiction rekindled, and they start abusing the drug again. So it's a big epidemic. We're having it depends where you are, but in certain places like Kentucky and West Virginia and parts of Florida, it's astronomical if you look at the numbers, the number of people who are abusing these drugs. So this is basically like so many public policy issues that you've had me come onto the show and talk about. And this is again a money and politics issue, where you have these big drug manufacturers. They don't want the public talking about the problem that they caused. So they've been able to co-opt these drug prevention nonprofits. So you have some of the largest groups in the country, the Partnership for Drug-Free America, TADCA, the group we were just talking about. They're obsessing over marijuana. They're spending money on ads. They have dozens of organizers. They're using their muscle on Capitol Hill. They're lobbying state legislators. They're putting out sample op-eds. They've got all of these resources they're using, obsessing over marijuana, when really, if you look at their financial, the group that are funding them, that's the problem that we should be confronting. Yet they've been essentially co-opted.
Who are some of the politicians who they have in their pockets, essentially? Because Patrick Kennedy is no longer serving. Who are some of the current politicians? Do we know that are in the? I guess I don't know what to call this. It's not like, I guess you could say big pharma, but it's sort of like big poppy. I don't know. I mean, like what is it exactly? What should we actually call these groups?
It's hard to say. There are a number of lawmakers who are actively trying to reform the way we prescribe prescription painkillers, because as you just mentioned, they're incredibly overprescribed. For some of these prescription painkillers, Americans consume basically 100% of them, even though we constitute less than 5% of global population. So it's a crazy overprescription problem, but there have been many common sense solutions that have been proposed. One is simply relabeling some of these prescription painkillers, saying that instead of taking them for medium amounts of pain, we should be only prescribing them for severe pain. There's efforts to reschedule some of these drugs. There are efforts to actually block the introduction of new, even more powerful painkillers like Sohydro, a new one that just hit the market this year. It's much more powerful than Oxycontin. And you look on Capitol Hill, there's a small number of lawmakers, many of them from Appalachia and Kentucky, who have signed on to efforts to block these drugs. But you look around the country, all these politicians who say they care about dangerous drugs, where are they? They don't co-sponsor this legislation. They're not signing letters to the FDA demanding change. They're not demanding that Bain or Harry Reid schedule these things for a vote. We're seeing so little action, and politicians like to posture and say they want to do the right thing, but pharma industry spends so much in politics. They spend so much in dark money. They spend so much in lobbying. They spend so much to co-opt all these political groups. They are able to block any meaningful change on the way these prescription drugs are prescribed. And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So unlike vaccines or other medical products that you kind of use once and then kind of are done with, antibiotics are another one. Painkillers are the biggest cash cow for a lot of these industries, because they don't just get prescribed once. People prescribe it and then they become obsessed with them, and they have to use them continually throughout their lives.